Hello and welcome to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. It's your host Matthew with you here, and on this episode it's a return to one of my favourite games, Rangers of Shadow Deep. I hooked up with Robert recently. God, that sounds a bit seedy, doesn't it? We got together, that sounds equally seedy. We were together in a room. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Playing Rangers of Shadow Deep. The third encounter, it was the Bridge Guards. So we were on to, I get mixed up with the scenarios and the missions. Mission 2, Scenario 1, I think it was, the Bridge Guards. So we took our party of intrepid adventurers into this big sort of rock-strewn field, and there was a river and a bridge to cross and those. But we'll go into that. Basically recorded a preamble. We had a quick chat after turn 5, which was kind of halfway, and then we discussed what happened at the end of the game. So you'll find out all about it during that recording. Just wanted to give you a heads up too that my voice was still a bit ropey. If you listen to the last episode, you'll know that I'd lost my voice a wee bit, so I'm a bit hoarse during the course of that recording, but hopefully it doesn't affect your enjoyment of it too much. Before we dive into that, I just want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this episode, Midlam Miniatures, one of my favourite miniature companies out there. So I really like going onto the Midlam website when I'm kind of looking for some characters or story for miniature agnostic games like Rangers of Shadow Deep. I'm also going to touch on a Frostgrave supplement later on in the programme, Perilous Dark, and the whole world building aspect of that. So it's great to go on Midlam's site and just look at the sort of characters, good and bad, that you might be able to pick up. One of the things I'm going to talk about in relation to Perilous Dark is the sort of dungeon crawling aspect. And I actually got a few miniatures from Midlam last year. I've been basically populating this dungeon that I've been creating with a view to getting it on the table at some point in the future. So they had a great range of, I think they're called Kraken cultists, so pretty Lovecraftian guys. They've got robes, they've got big tentacles as faces. Must be quite an interesting dinner party with these guys, you know, tentacles everywhere, but they're really good miniatures. A few of them sort of hunched over with blades, and there's one guy who's sitting on his throne, you know, big old concrete toilet, I reckon. So I've got them with a view to sort of putting them in this dungeon whenever I'm taking a party of heroes down there. I also got a couple of great ones that I've based in this way too. A sort of Grim Reaper guy, really good miniature, and a lady, like a ghost lady, she's carrying her head. She's lost her head quite literally. So yeah, I just really love that world building aspect of miniature agnostic games. You know, some of the big famous games out there, you get your lore pre-written for you. You're buying a character, you know that character's history and background, and that's great, and it totally has its place. You know, a lot of us love that sort of stuff. But just this, you know, you're buying a character, it literally is just a miniature, and you get to make up, you know, what the background is, what they're doing, what their motivations are. So great fun to do that. Great fun to build war bands and parties and like I say, populate dungeons as well. So whether you're in the market for gnomes or halflings or all sorts of beasts and baddies, head on over to bedroombattlefields.com/Midlam. That's MIDLAM. Right, are we ready to head off back into the Shadow Deep and meet some gnolls? I think we are. So let's hand things over to a previous and slightly hoarse version of me and my good pal Robert. All right, good to be back on the podcast, Robert.
Yeah, it's great. Can't wait to get back on the field.
So it was March last time we played a game of Rangers of Shadow Deep, and it went all right. It was our second game of the campaign, so we're going on to the third scenario here. It's called the Bridge Guards.
Yeah, we've left the spiders behind and time for a new threat to face.
Yeah, on this mission, we've basically got to cross this. It's meant to be a boulder field. You'll see I've used wooden blocks painted grey. So we've got to cross this like boulder field. There's a river up the other end, and there's a bunch of baddies, bunch of gnolls who are guarding the place we need to be, basically. So we've got the element of surprise here, because until we are seen, we can attack them. We get a wee bonus, I think. We'll go through the setup just now.
Okay, so this game is played on a 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot table. The Enthel River should run parallel to one table edge, about 6 inches in from that edge. A small stone bridge should span the centre of the river. A narrow ford should be marked 3 inches from one table end. The rest of the table should be very crowded with large rocks and occasional small trees and shrubs. Line of sight should be very restricted across the whole table. Near the bridge, on the small side of the table as divided by the river, set up a small camp with a fire, bedrolls, etc. Place 1 treasure token and 1 clue marker in or near the camp. Place 2 gnoll fighters in the camp. Gnoll's house party. Place 1 gnoll sergeant and 2 more gnoll fighters on the bridge. Place 4 gnoll archers adjacent to the river on the larger side of the table. There should be about 8 inches between each archer. Finally, place all the rangers and companions within 3 inches of the table edge furthest away from the river. And so, the scene is set.
Thank you very much. Yes, as you'll see up here, we've got I'm saying as you'll see in an audio format. I'm saying this to Robert, but the listener, I'm sure, theatre of the mind and all that. We've got Noel's house party, the wee camp up there. So that's their treasure token. It's like a wee sort of Christmas present looking thing. Our clue marker is a old Battle Masters dice, classic Milton Bradley, early 90s boxed set, Battle Masters. Good to see that back on the table. I've made this slightly harder for us in some sense, because see this big fellow here? He's like a sort of...
God.
Yeah, he's like a sort of god. I've put him down as a gnoll lord. So I've proxied an ogre's stats for this guy. And the reason I've put him on the table to make it harder is because I've actually given us an extra guy as well. So this is Goatsy. Goatsy, little beastman from Midland Miniatures. He's got hooves, he's got horns, he's got a big old axe and a cape and a bare chest because he's nails.
Goatsy bringing up the rear there?
Goatsy is bringing up the rear. So because we've got a bit of a helping hand here, I decided to give the baddies one as well. There is a chance that we will get an extra helping hand on top of that, because one of the event cards, I say untangling myself from the table leg there.
Please be Vinny the Vulture.
Well, Vinny the Vulture's already
on
on
the
here.
I thought you'd benched him.
No. Vinny's there. Vinny's there. So there's 2 things that could happen with the event cards here. A baddie vulture, he could arrive. You'll see them up on the windowsill there. So we've got another vulture, Vinny's nemesis. What would his name be? Vinny's nemesis.
Well, if you like wrestling, you've got Vincent McMahon, and then he'd have to be Eric Bischoff, or
right.
some Bischoff, Eric Bischoff.
Right, Eric Bischoff. I don't get it because I'm not a wrestling fan. I haven't seen it since.
He was the head of the WCW, the wrestling wars in the 90s.
Right. Okay. Well, I should maybe know that because I was into it back then.
Yeah.
But potential for 2 extra gnoll fighters. So we'll go Noel Edmonds and Noel Gallagher are waiting in the wings.
No, that's great. I can't top that.
And we have a potential ally in the form of a man-at-arms. I was thinking, what is the most puerile name we could give him without it just being outwardly vulgar or offensive?
What is he? Is he human?
I'll show you him. He is because I like to have established who this guy is before, if and when he comes on. So he's little white bearded. He's got a chainmail jacket. Looks an experienced fighter. He's got a big old axe.
I really want a bit of time to think about this.
What about Hard Dick? Because he's hard. He's solid, and he's either called Richard or he's just a dick.
And he's a tough talker. Apparently, that was an expression in America in the 60s. It's I think you should get some hard dick, as in a stern talking to.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean that'd be interesting to bring that back about these days, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe he can chastise his enemies before he brings his big chopper down on them.
So waiting on the wings in the event deck are who's the vulture? Eric Biscoff.
I haven't.
Eric Bristow.
I haven't decided on his surname. Like Eric Bischoff was the head of WCW, so you've got Vinny, Vincent McMahon there. So Eric Bischoff. I somehow thought maybe a bush would have a bird in it, because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Yeah.
This is getting out of hand. Let's have a think about his name.
Right, okay, we've got two Noel fighters. We've got Noel Edmonds and Noel Gallagher waiting to come on. They're just a pair of Nightmare Miniatures beastmen. And then we've got Hard Dick, who is he's just a honest soldier who I'd imagine is maybe caught up in some shenanigans here and just looking to probably lend a hand and get himself out of this pickle.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all the new dynamics, a few new faces here. Season 3 is really picking up.
I think one thing we've been guilty of in previous encounters, we've not really paid attention to our heroic abilities and spells. So I think you've got your ranger sheet there as well.
Yeah, like magic shot and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I've got deadly shot, I've got evade, I've got frenzied attack. Transpose I know. Now this is, I wish I could credit who it was that had pointed me in the direction of this, because it looks really useful. So I was moaning on a previous episode about Vinny the Vulture just being useless, and I couldn't really see what his point was. But transpose, is it on the
Yeah, I'm just
spells?
looking at it.
Yeah. So basically my ranger could, it says immediately switch the places of any two rangers or companions on the table. Either both of these figures may be in combat. Either or both, sorry.
So you can get Vinny to fly way up the top of that building,
exactly,
and then chuck your ranger up there.
Yeah, and then he can't get down. But because Vinny's so dynamic and he can get around, he just can't really do anything once he gets there. But it'd be a way to get into some interesting positions. Maybe draw these gnolls away from us, so we could sneak in and take what we need to take. You'll see the bridge there. We've also got, I think they call it a ford, so that's a crossable area as well. Right. I don't really know if we'd want to cross there, but we're going to have to get there anyway, I suppose. So
before the scenario begins, the players should select one figure to make a navigation roll. If successful, they may move any 3 heroes up to 6 inches in any direction. At the start of each turn, the players should select one hero on the table to make a stealth roll. If successful, the players may move one gnoll figure up to 6 inches in any direction. And this lasts until the alarm is raised. So we're rolling for stealth, not only for ourselves, but to manipulate which way the baddies go. And hopefully we can do that in such a way that cultivates a surprise attack. And so on.
Yeah, I think it's until one of them takes damage within line of sight of us, they don't know we're here. So we've got but anyway, I'll let you continue.
The Rangers have the element of surprise in this scenario. Whenever they make an attack of any kind against a gnoll, they receive a +4 bonus to their roll. And this lasts until the alarm is raised. If a gnoll ever activates with a hero in line of sight, or a gnoll takes damage within line of sight of another gnoll, the alarm is raised. So that's interesting. If we can somehow lure one guy and kill him before it gets to effectively his turn, then we've kept it quiet. However, if he dies in line of sight of one of his pals, then his pal is going to be like, why did Fred just fall over? So that's interesting. The players no longer get to make stealth checks or receive the attack bonus. I was going to ask about the river, but here it is. The Enthal River is wide, deep, fast-flowing, and shockingly cold. I had a teacher like that at school. Any figure that moves into the river ends its activation immediately. This includes anyone crossing the ford. Figures in the river make swimming rolls at -3, except figures at the ford who do not have to make swimming rolls. So it basically takes you 2 turns to get across the ford, because you have to stop. It's like a stop sign. Mm-hmm. You have to come to a complete stop, have a wee look, and then you can move. Any hero that moves into contact with the clue marker ends its current action and should roll on the clue marker table below. there is no target point in this scenario, but note that gnolls will never randomly move into the river. This scenario lasts a maximum of 10 turns. During the event phase of each odd-numbered turn, so turns 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9, the players should draw one event card.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, so there'll be 5 events happen throughout the course of the game. 5 event cards from 6. There's a deck of 6 sitting there. So one of those cards won't be used. Hopefully that's not Hard Dick's card, because I want to see him on the table. Are you happy enough, just before we get going then, are you happy enough with the deployment? Because we're lined up. Here's your 3. There's Goatsy in the middle. We'll share him. And there's my 3. Do you think it makes any difference, is what I'm trying to ask here? Like where we position ourselves at the starting point?
Well, I guess we could all huddle up and then try to take out 1 or 2, because if you miss but it's still our turn, then I could back you up and make sure the guy dies before the alarm is raised. But that's a little bit, I don't know, power gaming type things. I think we should enter into the spirit of it properly and do it as you've displayed it out, sort of thing.
So we're spreading out because we've got Goatsy in the party.
Yes, that's it. He's got some cheek, I have to say. But,
I knew that was coming. Right, okay, going to get cracking then, and we'll catch up midway through the game, find out how we're getting on.
Yeah.
Right, end of turn 5. It feels more than halfway here, given the amount of people that are dead, both on our side and on their side.
It's definitely the end game now. Yeah, we've whittled down the wheat from the chaff, although that's maybe speaking a little harshly about some of our former companions who are out the game at the moment. It was interesting as we moved our way up, and we kind of gave away the element of surprise after a wee while. But
I stupidly moved into line of sight very early, so we lost that advantage pretty early on.
But we had a turn to at least use our surprise and get a couple of +4s.
They're wearing those now.
Yeah, and I think this has been tougher. Maybe the rolls have just gone against us a couple more times than we're used to.
Yeah, there's been very early on we had the Vulture arrive on the scene, but my Ranger, after a couple of half-arsed attempts, was able to put enough arrows into him to bring him down.
Yeah.
We had Noel Edmonds join us in the middle of the table. He was subsequently killed by Goatsy, who had a valiant debut. He killed a couple of Gnolls, but was just killed there by the Gnoll Sergeant. So when we say killed, like, these guys will have to make their rolls at the end and find out if they literally are dead or if they're just maybe picking their teeth off the ground.
Yeah, so he's sitting in the ambulance waiting to be seen, and we'll see what happens when he makes his roll. And Fungus is having a hard time. He went into the water. Went into the river, failed his roll. He only had to roll 8 or more, but he stuffed it. So he's currently semi-drowning. He took a couple of damage from that. Your Ranger swapped places with Vinny, so he's way up here in the corner, away from all the danger.
Yeah, Vinny, so he flew up to the Gnolls camp, and the Gnolls had randomly, or not randomly, because they were teased away from the camp. So Vinny went up there, found the clue. We got the book. We rolled a 20. We got the book of poems. I think that's going to be worth 15 points to us at the end.
Yeah.
So like Robert says, he's now swapped places with my Ranger, who will get the treasure and then will leave the table and get us the remaining points. But yeah, we've lost
2.
Yeah, we've lost Boris and Goatsy. They were both put on their arse by the baddies. Only one Goblin Archer left on the table. No fighters at all. We've wiped through them, wiped through the rest of the archers. So it's that big demon, the Gnoll Lord, if you like, and the Gnoll Sergeant. They're pretty hard cases, if you like. So be good to try and bring one of them down. I dare say if we could team up on them.
Yeah.
But mind you, we're lacking a team to do the teaming up. But we've still got a couple.
The problem is I've got Count Gunter at the front, and he's gone down to half health. He's on 6 now, and there's a heavy rain, which means 12 inches is the maximum visibility, and -2 to shooting rolls. So this is going to be a bit more precarious. We might want to do some kiting or something, shooting and running away. or maybe get the companions to dive in to give us a couple of pluses to see if we can bring them down that way. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think the mission will be a success. It's just, it depends. It remains to be seen what's going to happen to those companions that have been put out of action, and then also whether we could take down any more of these baddies along the way. So let's get back to it. That was a cinematic finish, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. You were right on the edge of the boundary. We hadn't had anybody leave yet because they all died. There was 2 against 1 there with a huge overlord and a gnoll, and we stood tall. We lost a couple of people. You rolled a 20. The last archer rolled a 1. It was game over, and with your second activation, you left the board, and it's a clean sweep.
Yeah, it was one of the walking away, not looking at an explosion scenes, wasn't it? Yeah, so like Robert's saying, I might as well have taken the shot before leaving the table. I rolled a 20, he rolled a 1. He was lying there with, I don't even know where the arrow would penetrate, somewhere I wouldn't like to speculate. But that is comfortably the bloodiest game we've had so far. Looking at the table there literally is 2 people left standing. We didn't even make it to turn 10. So your Ranger and Count Gunther are just standing there pretty much covered head to toe in gore, aren't they?
Some of it's their very own gore, which they would probably prefer to be on the inside. Count Gunther was down to 6 health, which we mentioned before. My very own Ranger, Mr. Grubb, down to 11 health from 18. And, as they say in the Oscars, let's take a look back at who we've lost over the past wee while. There's Fungus, currently...
he didn't die in the water, though, did he? He nearly... No, he killed somebody too, didn't he? He killed the sergeant.
He did.
Although he died in doing so.
That's right. Other cinematic moment. The 2 of them, they came together. They both rolled 20 overall with their bonuses added on. And it doesn't just neutralise each other. As we remembered from last time, they both do the same damage at the same time. So it's like nuclear strikes on each other. And they both went down in a ball of flames.
I think that might have been Gus's first ever kill. I thought he was going to die in the water, but he got out the water eventually, and then he went and did that, didn't he?
Yeah, very much. He's the cavalier of the Dungeons and Dragons group, the one that doesn't do any fighting and just makes sarcastic comments and is basically scared. But there he pulled out the bag and he was like, there comes a time when a man has to stand up, and then he did, and then he fell down again.
So yeah, we could have... We did what we needed to do. We could have all just left the table earlier, but we decided to just stay and get waded in, didn't we? Try and kill as many folk as possible, get as many points as possible. But we're also going to have to do some rolls now to see what's actually happened to all the people that we've lost.
Well, ships can stay safe by staying in the harbour, but that's not what ships are built for. Let's
take a wee look at the book to see what we've got to roll for now. I'm just looking through my notes of the game too. So, yeah, it was your Ranger, Grubb. He killed an archer, 2 archers actually, and a couple of gnolls. Boris killed an archer. Vinny found the book of poems. My Ranger, he only made 1 kill. He killed a gnoll. Goatsy killed a couple of gnolls before valiantly being killed himself. And that heroic moment with Fungus as well. In fact, my Ranger, he did make that second kill. I tell a lie, he made that second kill just before the end of the game.
And even employing tactics, hit and run, hide and so on, ganging up on people, that was not as easy as it might have been. How many companions did we lose? 1, 2...
Almost all of them. Just Gunther that was remaining.
Yeah.
And my Ranger did survive just like he finished on 2 health and just made it off the table. So there got to a point where that extra gnoll arrived, and I was thinking to myself, like, if your guys ended up losing the fight to the big guy, there was actually a slight risk that we weren't going to get anyone off the table, because the archer had a shot at my Ranger as well. So there was a slight risk we weren't going to get anyone off the table, which was worth 15 points to us. 15 for the Book of Poems, 3 for each gnoll or vulture killed. So we picked up 69 experience points. We already had 1 experience point going into this, so we've got 70 So we don't level up, but it means that the next scenario that we play, we almost definitely will level up. Because you need to get 100 points to level up.
The ogre's worth 5 XP. Does that make it 71?
Yeah, 71. Before we check the fate of Goatsy, Fungus, Boris and Vinny, I first need to roll on the treasure table because we did find the treasure as well.
Yeah, priorities,
Going to do that.
Ooh.
19. Magic item. Okay, the magic item table. 15. Gemstone of Heartlight. A figure carrying this gem may discard the gem during its activation to gain an extra action. This may not take a figure above 3 actions during its activation. Cool. He'll use that in the next scenario, I guess. And now to more serious business. Right, the survival table. So here's how we'll do it. You could have Fungus and Goatsy.
Yeah.
I'll have Vinny and Boris. You want to go first for 1 year?
Yeah.
Who are you going to go for?
Fungus. So, what is it, 1 to 20 and... Okay.
Yeah, so 9 plus is full recovery. So we've got 1 to 2 is dead, 3 to 4 permanent injury, 5 to 6 badly wounded, 7 to 8 close call, and 9 and ups is totally fine.
6.
Badly wounded. Badly wounded. The figure has suffered a grievous wound. It will heal, but it's going to take time. If the figure is a ranger, he must start the next game at -5 health. If the figure is a companion, it either starts the next game at -5 health, or it may choose to sit out the rest of the mission.
Right. So he's on 8 now. Do they get to heal up and then go down to minus?
Yeah, I think they heal from their current damage.
So he can go to 5 then, right? Because his normal health is 10. So I can put him into the game.
You could start him at 5, or we could just sit him out in favour of somebody else.
Alright, we can decide close to the time.
So Fungus, badly wounded. Right, okay, I'm going to roll for Vinny. Let's see what happens to Vinny.
Fine.
He's totally fine with an 11. So you're rolling for big old Goatsy.
Come on, Goatsy.
Oh my days, he's dead. It's a 1. It's a 1. What an afternoon he's had, because he killed a few people and then he died. And now he's literally dead.
He's like the Mozart of his age, you know. He was a genius, died very young after doing some wonderful things.
Yeah, the Goatsy on his debut, very eventful, and he's dead. He's rolled a 1 there and he's dead.
Live fast, die young.
Yeah, he'll be. I wonder if he was 27 years old, he'll just be on posters and teenagers' walls.
I nearly mentioned the 27 Club. But yeah, he's up there with Amy Winehouse now.
Last one then, Boris.
Oh, I need bother for you, eh?
19, he's absolutely fine, yeah. He must feel bad about that. He must get that survivor's guilt, because his pal, who he basically got him into the shit in the first place, because it was Boris that moved in to give the game away.
He got a wee bonus in his pay for, a referral bonus for bringing somebody in. Like with Sky, if you get somebody to join Sky, if you're a Sky customer. 500
quid after a year.
Yeah.
But he won't get that. Well,
no, because they've got to stay in for at least 6 months and whatnot. He's only been in 5 minutes. No.
Cool. That was a really good game. Like I say, very bloody, lots of death, lots of things happened. We do literally have a death on our hands. Maybe have to have a wee funeral for him now, I suppose.
That's right. Yeah. Poor Goats.
Maybe he could come back as a...
Son of Goatsy.
Yeah, I like him. When you get like a band, like the Eagles, they're basically all 90. You always find like one of their sons is playing in the band.
Oh yeah, like David Starkey, Ringo Starr's son playing, or whatever, or Julian Lennon.
Yeah. That
sort of thing. But yeah, my name is Mario Goatsy, you killed my father, prepare to die.
Yeah, there'll be a big revenge angle there, won't there?
Yeah, right. Well, this builds nicely.
Alright then, there we go. That was our latest game of Rangers of Shadowdeep, the Bridge Guards. Thoroughly enjoyed it, as I said, and really looking forward to the next one already. I think the next one we're going to play is the Blood Moon supplement, the werewolf one. I've talked about that on the last episode. So I've got my to-do list. I've got my miniatures that I need for that, a couple of terrain pieces that I want to get before then. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on that. Oh, and you could see pictures of this. I took quite a lot of photos on the day. You'll see that I've been using wooden blocks as well. I've taken Joe's advice on that. So basically the kids' toy box emptied onto the table to create some good obstacle terrain. So head on over to bedroombattlefields.com and check out all the pictures in all their glory. By the way, I mentioned during that chat that a listener had got in touch about the transpose. I think it's a spell or a heroic ability. I think it's a spell. So Vinny the Vulture, he gets to swap with the Ranger. So it was thanks to Rob for that tip. I had a look back on the comments on the website at bedroombattlefields.com. So big thanks to Rob for pointing me in the direction of that. And it certainly did come in useful in that scenario. And another thanks to friend of the show, Mark, previous guest on the show, because in our Discord channel, bedroombattlefields.com/Discord, which is really good, by the way, it's really, really coming on in there. I'm enjoying dipping in and just reading things and having a wee chat with folks of a like mind. But Mark had mentioned a Frostgrave supplement that I hadn't heard of before called Perilous Dark. And I made the bold claim on the last episode. I think I was like, I don't really buy that much stuff, and I seem to have bought quite a lot of stuff in the last couple of weeks. So I think if you go out there and just make a claim like that, you're destined to end up with egg on your face. But I did go on to Amazon and I picked up a copy of this Perilous Dark book, and it is brilliant. Like, I've read through it cover to cover by now in I think just a few days. So it's not a huge book, but it's packed with good content. And I would kind of describe this as like it's kind of 50% scenarios, 50% how to. You know, it's Joe McCulloch's kind of explaining or guiding you through how you might create, because a lot of this is focused, in fact the whole thing's focused on solo and co-op play, because obviously Frostgrave, it's warband versus warband. So this is more of a solo co-op, so it marries up very well with Rangers of Shadowdeep. Like when you're actually reading through it, almost all of it can apply to Rangers of Shadowdeep, and I think that's what appealed to me so much, because you know, the two games are very distinctive in their own right, but there's a lot of overlap, which is a good thing in my opinion, because it enables a bit of creative. You know, you could pull wee bits and pieces from one to the other. So whilst I was reading this book, I was almost, you know, thinking of it as a Rangers of Shadowdeep guide. So he's talking about how to go about creating these sort of solo and co-op games, and talking through some of the pitfalls as well. And specifically, literal pitfalls, because there's a lot in there about traps and stuff like that. But specifically, you know, fighting enemies, and the fact that an AI system on the tabletop can never ever replace a human's intelligence. So, you know, you could come up with quite decent mechanics in Rangers of Shadowdeep, and you know, the rules in this book, or the guides in this book, do a good job at that. But he's kind of stressing that there needs to be more to it than just all these opponents are moving towards you and you're fighting them off, or you've just got to kill them all. So kind of talking about the fact that you're fighting against the scenario, or you're fighting against the tabletop, if you like. So it's all about your objectives, tokens that you're trying to access, and, you know, really cool tips like, so there's some huge demon on the table which can't be killed. You know, it can fight you, it can engage you in combat, and you probably won't last very long. So maybe there are 6 or 7 objective or clue markers on the table, and you basically are going through them, searching them, and trying to get, like, I think it was a page of a book that you could banish this demon back to the plane from where it came from. So things like that, you know, it's not just let's get waded in and kill all these AI opponents. working our way through the battlefield and things are happening, whether that's an event deck like Rangers of Shadow Deep, or whether you're rolling on like event tables or objective or clue tables or whatever, random monster generators. And it got me thinking about, with Rangers of Shadow Deep, there are, when you look at the event decks in each scenario, they're very scenario specific, but there are always like 1 or 2 cards per scenario that you could pull and make a more generic deck. So I got to thinking about, if you take these 2 or 3 more generic events, you could build a decent sized deck that would apply to any scenario that you created in the future. So these are things like, swarms of insects arriving, or the weather changes, or there is an earthquake, or a random trap goes off. One of your party suddenly gets terrified about something and has to pass a test. So if you have a deck like this and you want to create some scenarios, you only maybe need to come up with 2 or 3 scenario-specific event cards, and then you just chuck them in the deck with the rest of these like more generic ones. So already that gives you a lot of flavour and a lot of random events and stuff like that. Really keep things interesting for scenarios that you want to create in the future. So if you're a Rangers of Shadow Deep player, even if you never played Frostgrave before, I'd thoroughly recommend getting this Perilous Dark book. Really reasonable price and brilliant content. Like I say, a mixture of pre-written scenarios in there, and a lot of how-to advice and guidance as well from Joe. And there was a section I talked at the start of the podcast about sort of creating my own like dungeon crawler, because I've spoken on the podcast before. I've got Dungeon Saga, but it's a great toolkit as well as like a boxed game. Like the miniatures you get with it are great and the scenarios are great, but you've got the dungeon tiles, you've got the dungeon furniture, and you can very easily use miniatures that you have, or new miniatures that you buy, to create a sort of themed dungeon of your choosing. And that's what I'd been doing. Mentioned at the start about the Midlam miniatures, Kraken, Cult Range, and just a lot of other like bad looking guys as well that I've stuck in this dungeon. And because I've got the Adventurer's Companion supplement, I think it was, there's rule sets in there for solo and co-op play as well, and they're all right, but I think because I prefer so much to play the sort of Rangers of Shadow Deep style rules, I'm thinking of adapting it to that instead. And I went back through the box, and there's a really cool deck in here called Uncharted Dungeon. So I'm just having a look at it now. So these cards basically tell you. So they're categorised, you've got the A deck, the B deck, the C deck, and so on. I think there's about 8 of them. So the idea of this is you draw your first card. It shows you the dungeon piles that you need to put down. It shows you where the doors could potentially be, and it marks out areas where opponents or things like traps as well could be, and treasure and things like that as well. So this would adapt really well over to Rangers of Shadow Deep, plus the advice given in this Perilous Dark supplement. And like I say, they're categorised, so it's almost like mini decks. So this ensures that you're never going to turn a card over and it's going to demand that you put down a bit of dungeon tile that you've already used. So it's quite clever the way that they've done that as well. It means that you could have 6 or 7 times where you go through a door and you've got to build a new section of dungeon, and you know that you're going to have the cards, the dungeon tiles, to be able to create that dungeon. But anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. Big thanks once again to our sponsor, Midlam Miniatures. Check them out at bedroombattlefields.com/Midlam. And remember, if you haven't done so already, why not jump into the Discord channel and have a wee chat with like-minded hobbyists of a certain age. You'll find that at bedroombattlefields.com/Discord. Thanks once again for listening, and we'll chat again on the next one.